Hey friends, and welcome back to Movies I Watched This Week. Happy Martini Monday. We watched 7 movies this week, and I have a lot to say, so I'm gonna make this really short, or try my best. So grab a drink, get comfortable, chin chin, let's begin. So long awaited, long overdue, the first movie that I watched this week was Anora. I finally bucked up and rented it because my stubborn ass thought the movie was $19.99 to rent, and it was $9.99. And that's completely my bad. I gave Anora a 4.5 stars. I think it was 4.5 stars. The only reason I gave it 4.5 instead of 5, even though nobody has to justify themselves in their ratings on Letterboxd. Never feel like you have to. The reason I gave Anora a 4.5 was because I felt like something was missing. And the only reason I feel like that was because of how much hype and attention this movie has gotten, and there's so much talk online about the ending and the American dream, and I guess the entire facade of the American dream, and the idea that you can come from nothing and have everything you want just like given to you, or because you work hard. Like, I think we all know that it doesn't really work that way in most circumstances. So I was just kind of expecting the ending to have this big like twist or like whoa shock moment. And there was, which we'll get to in a second, but rather than it feeling like jumping off a cliff, it felt more like being punched in the stomach. So what I wrote about the ending was that I loved how the film itself is so kinetic from the start of the film until the very last sequence between Annie and Igor. It's go, 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 go. And it's like building you up. It's like love bombing you, this momentum and romance and excitement between Vanya and Ani, Mikey Madison, and Mark Edelstein. So the film is so kinetic. Like, it starts off with the sequence in the club. We're moving around. We're seeing everybody dancing. We're seeing the money being thrown around, the lights, everything. It's like very lyrical in the way that it moves. And then as Annie and Vanya have this odd meet cute in the club, and then they meet again at his house, like it's still kinetic, but it's more rigid, you know, they're getting to know each other, and then within mere moments they're like inseparable and just the pinnacle of, I guess, love bombing, because they moved really fast, and then they got married, and then obviously all of that took a horrible turn for Annie. Basically what I wrote about the final sequence and the entire pacing of the film, which was so fast. I can't believe that movie was 2 hours. It felt like it was over in a second, in a good way. Like, I felt fulfilled in the fact that I was like, everything's happening and I'm so engaged because the pacing was amazing. I wrote, I love how kinetic the film was up until the final scene with Annie and Igor in the car. It was static, deep, raw, and then cut to black and we see the credits. Annie's tears suddenly cease and we just are left swallowing it up. So rather than there being like a cliffhanger or something that happens and the film leaves us on this note of what the hell just happened, it's more so leaving you like, what's gonna happen to her now? She's gonna have to go back to work. The whole idea of the American dream, which then goes into the use of red and blue throughout the film, that I thought was beautiful. I thought it was fantastic. I thought the use of the skyline and all the lights really elevated the theatrical element of both what Annie does for work and the American dream. And I just thought each performance was so different, and they were all so layered. Oh, they just were great. She's great. I really love her. I really mean that. And I loved the use of the vape in this film. I love the use of vapes in films in general, because I feel like all media, most media, you're like, cigarettes are shoved down your throat. It's like everybody's smoking cigarettes and it looks so cool. Smoking isn't cool. If you've ever smoked a cigarette, it tastes disgusting. You smell, your fingers smell, your breath smells, it lingers and you smell. And I would know because I'd smoked cigarettes previously in my life, and I will own up to that, and I don't do that anymore. But I have smoked a cigarette once in my life and it was stinky. Okay? It was stinky. So when people have vapes in movies and TV shows, it's really funny to me because it's like blueberry. I gave the movie 4 stars. I really thought it was great. I wanted to give it 5, but I didn't feel it in my heart and soul. I think it absolutely deserves the acclaim, the attention, the praise, the Criterion Collection, the awards, everything. And I really, really think it's because of the pacing and structure of this film. Like, if it wasn't so loud and in your face and chaotic, it wouldn't have worked. The next movie I watched was Blue Velvet, available on Max, released in 1986, directed by David Lynch. So this movie follows Jeffrey, played by Kyle MacLachlan, who comes back home to his suburban town of Lumbertown because his dad's sick. And when he comes home, he stumbles upon an ear in a field. And rather than, I don't know, calling somebody and saying, hey, there's like an ear in this field, can somebody take care of it? He decides that he's going to play Nancy Drew and be the hero to figure out this mysterious crime in his suburban town. Laura Dern, who plays Sandy. So these two decide to buck up, join forces, and basically figure out this crime that they don't know what the crime is. But they end up figuring it out somehow through committing more crimes. So let me explain that to you. So Jeffrey finds the ear, then he meets Sandy, and he's like, your dad's a cop, you have intel. Let's go find out all the information we can and figure out what happened to his ear. And so with that, that's how we meet Dorothy. Dorothy, if you've ever seen the poster for Blue Velvet, the woman with the short brown hair, that's Dorothy. Dorothy is a singer at a lounge, and she sings Blue Velvet all the time. She also wears a blue velvet robe. So Jeffrey goes to her house and is like, I'm going to rummage through all her things and see if I can find anything that leads us to this ear. And Sandy sits in the car and is like, I'm going to honk 4 times when Dorothy gets home so that you know to wrap this up. So, of course, he's going through the house, going through the house, going through the house. Oh my God, Dorothy's here. Sandy, honk, 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 honk. He doesn't hear shit. He's busy, like, flushing the toilet. So then he goes and hides in the closet. Dorothy comes in the house, and some weirdo man comes in and then leaves. And then another weirdo man comes in, and he is the guy that kidnapped Dorothy's husband and son, and is basically the reason for the ear and all of the other awful things that unfold in this movie, which is why I give it 5 stars, because I absolutely loved it. I'm still questioning all the things that happened, and I loved the exploration and depiction of the underbelly of suburbs and the facade of like what goes on in these homes behind white picket fences and all of that eeriness and weirdness. And obviously it's a David Lynch film, so it has all of that eeriness and creepy noir in tandem with the absolute most beautiful, rich, vibrant, almost feels Technicolor cinematography. My favorite shot in the whole film was when Jeffrey's standing in the closet watching Dorothy, and you have the living room, and then in the left side of the screen is like a tiny sliver of light, and it's coming from the bathroom. So you're just looking at this maroon, like 80s living room, and then the bathroom in the back corner, and she's like so small. It just was so wonderful. I loved the use of pink and blue to contrast Sandy and Jeffrey's characters and like traditional gender norms and the way that they fit together, especially in the booth scene when they were like concocting their plan. The apartment set design was like so gorgeous that I saved it to my Pinterest. I can't stop thinking about it. And the rest of my notes basically just emphasize my confusion and surprise with the use and I guess depiction of sadism and like masochism. Is it masochism? Along with voyeurism and the idea of being a hero, but how are you a hero if the way that you saved somebody was by violating their privacy and like trust? Off the bat, Jeffrey is invading Dorothy's home, watching her like undress, watching her engage in this like weird parent play thing with that weird guy. I don't know what the hell was going on over there. But he's watching all this happen and he doesn't do anything to help her. He waits till afterwards. So very similar to Ralph in The Blood on Satan's Claw, and the fact that like you think you're a good guy, but it's like, at what cost? You didn't help anybody really, did you? So the movie poses a question, you know, am I a detective or am I a pervert? Because he thinks by finding this ear and becoming so interested in what could possibly going on, like, ooh, I'm a detective, I'm gonna figure this out, I'm gonna be the town hero. But at the end of the day, you're just kind of a pervert creep because you were like invading this woman's home and her livelihood and everything for your own benefit and like pleasure in a way. It was really brilliant. And that's what it served for me. And I gave it 5 stars. Next movie I watched, 500 Days of Summer. And I rated this movie 3 stars because I didn't really like it. And that's okay. 500 Days of Summer, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel, is not a love story. They say that right in the beginning, and immediately I was like, what do you mean? Because everything I've ever seen about this movie is how it's romantic. You know, I love the Smiths. What'd you say? I said I love the Smiths. So I was a little bit surprised when I wasn't just a fan of it. Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays Tom. Zooey Deschanel plays Summer. Chloe Grace Moretz. I love her. I love her in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. She has been booked since birth. I recognize that voice anywhere. I love Chloe Grace Moretz. The Kick-Ass movies were my shit in middle school. So the premise of the movie is that Tom is struggling with the fact that he lost his girlfriend, kinda, even though she wasn't like officially his girlfriend. Tom maybe just like wasn't ready to accept that. He works for a greeting card company. He's a hopeless romantic. And so you go through the film going through these 500 days that they spent together and watching their relationship fall apart, and then watching Tom cope with the fact that they're not going to be together because she married the next guy she met like right after Tom, and Tom was just kind of like, you what? And this film reminds me of Chasing Amy, which I also watched, we'll get to later, in the fact that I feel like everybody has that person where you know in your mind that it was never going to work out, but a piece of you just is so in love with them and obsessed with them that you'll never let it go and you'll think about them for the rest of your life. For Tom, that will be Summer. In Chasing Amy, it's Alyssa. For me, it's the hot Romanian guy that I met one time when I was studying abroad. I wasn't a fan of the huge narration. It kind of took me out a little bit. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel had amazing, undeniable, tender, kind chemistry. And I love that because I think it's fleeting. I don't like Zooey Deschanel's character. I didn't like her character. And the reason is because she is the Manic Pixie dream girl that doesn't exist. If you've ever seen Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, this movie, the idea of the Manic Pixie dream girl is like she's everything a guy could want and more, and she's absolutely unattainable. I wasn't a fan of her character, and that made me pity Tom, and I don't like pitying men ever in romantic movies, but I did. This movie reminded me of Ramona and Beezus with Selena Gomez and Joey King. I can't tell you why. I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. I thought it was light, but I gave it 3 stars because I was just kind of like, yeah. And that's what I thought about it. So let's move forward. Next movie I watched was my favorite movie I watched this week, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, available for free on Pluto TV. I gave this movie 5 stars. Directed by Kevin Smith, came out in 2001. I don't really have many things on this because it's just so absolutely hysterical. I was like, I'm in the mood for a laugh. And I know I'll get a good laugh with a Kevin Smith movie. But this was like, unlike anything else. I was laughing so hard and so loud. It was kind of embarrassing, especially because my parents were downstairs and they're like, what's so funny? And I was like, Jay and Silent Bob. Ooh. From Mallrats to Clerks to Chasing Amy, everything. Like, everybody's in there. Matt Damon, Ben Affleck. You know, when Ben Affleck came on the screen, I screamed. Jason Lee was in there too, and I was like, oh my god, I absolutely loved it. I screamed so loud. I loved the breaking the fourth wall. I loved how it was just kind of like, it felt like an inside joke on a huge budget Miramax film. And the breaking the fourth wall, like, that solidified that this is my shit, this is my vibe, this is exactly what I want to watch. Sad, happy, uninspired, wallowing in self-pity. I want to watch Kevin Smith films. I think they're great. I love the stoner film genre. I love these like cult classic following movies. And I just love Jay and Silent Bob. So next I watched A Real Pain, which I was surprised by how short it was. I absolutely loved it. It is Jesse Eisenberg's directorial debut. He wrote it, he directed it, he starred in it, and it came out in 2024 and is available on Hulu. So the film follows Benji and David. Benji is played by Kieran Culkin, and David is played by Jesse Eisenberg. And they're 2 cousins who are going on a trip to Poland to go on a tour of where their grandmother lived, who survived the Holocaust and recently passed, and in her will, she kind of like was like, will you guys go visit my home? It's this very short film that follows this tumultuous, odd relationship between these two cousins and the way that they interact with all these people on a tour. And over the course of this like very short film, we discover that Kieran Culkin's character Benji is dealing with mental health issues and he had a suicide attempt, and you're battling all of that with Jesse Eisenberg's character navigating his relationship and like navigating his relationship to Benji's mental health and how that affects him. Always brings such spontaneity and serendipity to his roles that I think sometimes people can think like, oh, he acts the same, but I think if you watch this, you won't feel that way. So what I wrote was, Jesse Eisenberg plays David, a timid, type A, nervous and nerdy, dorky dad. Like a usual type that Jesse Eisenberg plays, but there's so much depth and emotion in this film, and it's so subtle in conversation between characters of all different walks of life coming to go to a Holocaust museum because of their heritage, or maybe they were just curious and always wanted to go for the history. So you have all these people with all these different backgrounds going to a place that has such deep historical, emotional, familial, generational trauma, and then you're also dealing with these people's trauma themselves. So you have historical generational trauma of the Holocaust, then you have familial trauma of just existing, and then personal trauma of like, you know, Benji, who is dealing with being suicidal. I apologize if that sounded insensitive. Sorry to talk about it again, guys, but I did backpack across Europe one time. And what I love so much about the cinematography in this film is that it felt how it feels to go sightseeing in a city you've never been to. Very fragmented and fast, and you're like, oh, there's a lot of people over here, I guess we'll go over here. It's just like, what are we looking at right now? What's going on? And it was very fun and whimsical, the way that they like always were walking down the screen to like progress through the city, and then the trains and the use of architecture to move along the story, and shooting through the archways and like windows. And I just really loved the tacticalness of the film. I love movies about complex family ties. I love movies that have ensemble family casts and it's all overlapping and it's a lot of like chaos and tears. I love that kind of stuff. So this was really great. And one of the things about this movie that I think I loved so much, other than the strange humility to it, because obviously this is a story about people going to experience a part of their heritage and a piece of their family history, so it has humility to it. But the reason I say it was strange is just because there were elements like when they go to the grandma's house and the neighbor's like, why are you putting rocks on the front door? Like, that's just such a normal thing that would happen, where you'd be like, why? I'm putting rocks on the door. Like, why do you care? Talking to a stranger. I love those moments in film because they're so real. Like, you're doing something, you're traveling, and like some weird interaction happens. And then with that is the element of play. And I think we see that with Benji's character throughout the film, is that he just wants to play. He wants to live. He wants to be free. But he's like, he is that way because his mind is completely like tied up in shackles. And so he's personable, and David's jealous of the way that he lights up every room. But Benji's dealing with, yeah, I may light up every room, but I don't have the emotional, or like I don't have the same strength that maybe you have. And so they have a really beautiful conversation on the roof that made me sob because it felt very personal to me. And I don't need to elaborate why. I wish it was longer. I wanted a bit more time with them after the grandma's house. I feel like it was cut short. And then we were in the airport and I had after sun trauma. And I was really scared. Then I did my first rewatch of the year, but it's totally justified in my opinion because it's Chasing Amy, one of my favorite films of all time. Of course, it's a 5-star, 1997 Kevin Smith. And I watched it because after watching Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Joey Lauren Adams, who plays Alyssa in the film Chasing Amy, she made a cameo at the end, and I was like, I have to watch this. I haven't watched Chasing Amy really since high school. So Chasing Amy, for those of you who don't know, even though I mentioned it multiple times, you should watch it by now. It's available on Pluto TV for free. Ben Affleck plays Holden McNeil, a comic book artist who lives with his homophobic best friend and inker, Banky Edwards. An inker is a tracer. They trace over the pencil. I mean, it's like a whole plot point in the movie. The two work together on a comic, Blunt Man and Chronic, inspired by Jay and Silent Bob. Through their theatrical, endearing friend Hooper, played by Dwight Elwell, they meet Alyssa, Joey Lauren Adams. However, Alyssa is gay. This isn't really a problem for anyone except Ben Affleck's character, who happens to be in love with her, and when he finds out that she's gay, he just like reveals himself to be the most awful person ever. He's like, she's perfect, she's so cool, she's so fun, she's so chill. And then he finds out she's gay and he's like, well, you just haven't met the right guy. This film pretty much explores, I think, a very surface level exploration of bisexuality and confusion around sexuality, and how I don't think it's black and white. Pressures her about her past sexual experiences because he's an insecure man with a goatee. And I love Ben Affleck. But Ben Affleck in Chasing Amy, like, I don't like him. And I don't like that goatee. But my favorite part is in the restaurant when Holden, Ben Affleck, is sitting with Jay and Silent Bob, and they tell him, like, you're chasing Amy, which is basically Kevin Smith, Silent Bob, tells a story about Amy, this girl that he was in love with, that essentially he let slip away, which brings us back to 500 Days of Summer, that person that you're just constantly, like, the rest of your life, you're gonna wonder, like, what if it did work out, even though it was doomed from the start? And so then the film ends. I'm not gonna spoil it, I almost just did. I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but there's a really, really good scene with Alyssa, Jason Lee's character Banky, and Holden, and it's just so emotional and it's so aggressive, and it makes me so angry every time I see it. And I just think the writing was absolutely fantastic, and I love this movie, and it's amazing, and you should watch it. Okay, and finally, very short and sweet, I watched Balloonerism, which, if you didn't know, last week Mac Miller's team camp released Balloonerism, and it's his most recent album. So there was a short animated film attached to it, and so of course I watched it. It was only like 30 minutes long. It's on Prime, and this is what I wrote, just a little blurb. Abstract animation exploring the loss of childhood innocence and the feeling of pending doom as you approach adulthood and uncover the truths of society and life. There's an element of play, magic, imagination as they tie together in artistry and creativity. These traits and talents are often overlooked and censored. So it's this very abstract animation of like scary looking creatures and children going on this journey through what would feel like a dreamlike state, things that wouldn't happen, or like, it was very surrealist. We have a circus. It's very distracting and unsettling with the music in the background because, you know, you have all these visuals and it feels like characters that maybe would be painted on in a nursery, like animals and things like that. And then you have Mac Miller saying in the background, there's no such thing as freedom. I just thought it was really great. It was directed by Samuel Jerome Mason, and I thought the artistry and the surrealism of the short film was just wonderfully cryptic. And I'll leave it at that. I mean, I didn't really rate. I mean, I think it was like, yeah, I would give it 5 stars. I thought it was great for what it was. Like, it wasn't like a narrative story, and I just thought it was really beautiful with the album in the background because I'm a huge Mac Miller fan. Those are all the movies I watched this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more, there's 3 more. You can go help yourself. You can go pick. Thank you guys so much for watching. I guess I'll see you next Monday. Treat yourself to a martini. Treat yourself to a movie. Treat yourself to something fun because you deserve it. I'll see you next time. I'll see you soon. Chin chin.